It's practically impossible to make a superhero film work without having to rely on some CGI and VFX magic. While that might be pretty obvious, ever since the use of special effects has become so common, it sometimes gets difficult to separate the real from the CGI. Your favorite DC movies are no exception. From Superman's first flight to the underwater Aquaman, we're taking you behind the scenes of DC movies to see how they're made. One of the most powerful superheroes of the DC universe wouldn't really be around if it wasn't for Richard Donner. He brought the comic book character to life in 1978, and that's when the Caped Crusader became an icon of American pop culture. Donner's influence transcends DC borders. In addition to DC Films president Jeff Johns, his Superman inspired Marvel Studios president Kevin Feige. Turns out both interned with Donner back in the day and believe that the original Superman movie is, till this day, the textbook example of the perfect superhero origin story. So what was it that made the film both iconic and inspiring? Because it came in 1978, back when the kind of special effects that we have today were nothing but a fantasy. Donner's team didn't even have computers in those days, so basically 90% of the things were impossible. I wanted to do something in Superman that was a cinematic feat, said Donner, and the greatest feat the movie achieved was making Superman fly. That's where the state-of-the-art Zoptic front projection system came in. We know it's a mouthful, but that technology gave Superman the power to fly by ingeniously combining projectors and mirrored lenses. It allowed the hero to fly towards and away from the camera. Donner revealed that the team running the flying unit was actually crying because it was so good. Next up, Batman Begins. Most of Christopher Nolan's films are famous for taking a much practical approach when it comes to visual effects. Don't believe us? Remember the compelling fight scene in Inception, the one where the hallway is literally rotating? Yeah, that was not CGI, but even he has to turn the VFX on from time to time for his more super endeavors. Essentially, Batman Begins is a non-special effects movie. Even then, it uses about 600 effects shots. One of the hardest parts for the VFX team was to make the menacing Batmobile look as convincing as possible. Visual effects co-supervisor Dan Glass and partner Janik Sears pulled it off by using a combination of trick shots and miniatures. So basically, Batman's ride behind the scenes was a 3/4 scale 5-foot miniature model. Even within the miniature rooftop section, we cut 2 inserts that were shot full size to trick the viewer's eyes, revealed Glass. The secret to pulling off perfect miniature shots is the scale, and they pushed their hardest to use large miniatures. Some were even 35 feet tall, so the miniatures that the team created weren't that many at all. The 600 visual effects shots for the movie were actually divided between VFX houses. One was the UK-based Double Negative. They were responsible for half of the effects shots and were nominated at the Visual Effects Society Awards for a job well done. This film definitely captures some of the most spectacular shots we've ever completed, shared Paul Franklin, the in-house VFX supervisor. Next is Constantine. Keanu Reeves shared a bit of love-hate relationship with Hollywood. After the wildly successive Matrix trilogy, his films didn't fare well with the critics. 2005's Constantine was yet another one of his films that tanked with the critics as they bashed the supernatural DC flick. But surprisingly, it had an audience score of 72% on Rotten Tomatoes. The sci-fi horror movie depended heavily on special effects. They were practically used in every scene of the movie. The demons from hell in the movie were one of the most outstanding visual effects. Essentially, they were computer-generated characters, but in order to make them seem a little more realistic in terms of movements and actions, the VFX team turned to motion capture. Other than the hell demons, another important CG character in the film was the Vermin Man Demon. According to director Francis Lawrence, the creation of this creature was pretty costly. Since the Vermin Man was all CGI, the fight sequence had to be acted out by Keanu alone, so behind the scenes, it was just the actor fighting and struggling against the unseen demon. Speaking of effects, how can we not talk about the portrayal of hell in the movie? Literally every single element in the hell scenes were computer-generated. While you probably would have guessed that, we bet you didn't know that the 2D painting process was also used to bring hell to the screen. The special effects team took a picture of a particular location and then processed it further to make it appear more dramatic. Next, we have Superman Returns. Bryan Singer's 2006 Superman Returns wasn't really amazing thematically speaking, but behind the scenes, it was the first major effects film to be shot on the new Panavision's Genesis camera system. Technically, the Genesis gave the shots a broader color space than anything before. We're in 4:4:4, so we have a broader bit depth and the low light response is still very good, explained VFX supervisor Mark Stetson. One of the film's biggest wins in terms of visual effects was making Braden Roth look good as he soared through the skies. The team really wanted to make Superman fly in as many different ways as possible. To make the flight sequence look as real as possible on the screen, stunt coordinator R.A. Randall was brought in. He came up with the idea of a series of different wire rigs and men dressed in green suits who would control the cape flapping around in the wind. The stunt coordinator for the film would say if it looked better doing it for real, then that was the way to go about it naturally. They ended up putting Superman on a box and a turntable, amongst other systems. Up next, Watchmen. Zack Snyder's Watchmen is a bit of a cult classic. Despite being written off as a total flop after tanking at the box office for being mechanical, heartless, and tragically hollow, many loved it for the exact reasons and ended up at 64% on Rotten Tomatoes. It was unlike any superhero movie we had seen before. Even the critics vouched for it. One of the biggest challenges for the noir superhero movie that the VFX team had to overcome was keeping up with Dr. Manhattan. They had to figure out a way to make him into a computer-generated character that could survive the entire length of the film in a way that would make him seem like the real deal. Another challenge when it came to VFX was pulling off Jackie Earle Haley's character, the masked vigilante Rorschach. The actor was essentially performing with a sock on his head. As funny as that sounds, that's how his character's unique moving mask was created. They made sure the eye holes of his mask were large enough for the audience to read his eyebrows and the expression on his eyes. Basically, Haley did everything. The team just took the footage to shop afterwards and tracked the tracking markers to replace everything on his face with the famous animated ink blots. If you've seen The Watchmen, then you probably know that the black dots on the mask were extremely specific to Rorschach's mood. The level of detail that went into making the unconventional superhero movie is truly impressive, don't you think? Now we'll dive into Green Lantern. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. One of the biggest superhero flops of any cinematic universe was the infamous Green Lantern. It had a whopping production budget of $200 million, but unfortunately could only return $116 million domestically. One of the biggest shortcomings of the Ryan Reynolds star was the poor quality of special effects. As soon as fans found out about Hal Jordan's fully CGI supersuit, they had their reservations. The film's visual effects supervisor, Karen Gulekis, revealed that having a computer-generated suit gave the VFX team more flexibility when it came to its design and powers. So Reynolds had to wear a tracking suit to play the very green superhero. Dots had to be placed on his neck and even on his face for the scenes in which his character was wearing a mask. Many believe that the suit itself was sort of passable, but the weird-looking mask ended up ruining the whole effect. But let's be honest, other than giving us the iconic couple of Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds, the movie didn't do much. Last on our list is Aquaman. Jason Momoa's aquatic adventures were the DC Universe's saving grace. The movie wasn't just a box office success, it far exceeded expectations and was the first of the franchise to hit $1 billion. The underwater film really used special effects in the most fascinating way. Aquaman needed its leads to be able to actually swim underwater in the FX scenes. The actors were pretty much puppeteered with stunt harnesses and specialized rigs. The rigs, while essential to the shoot, ended up giving the VFX team a bit of trouble. Replacing them in various shots meant replacing much of the body of the actors. They had to create digital doubles to make up for that. Safe to say they succeeded. While we're at it, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom is slated to release later this year by December 16th. And that wraps up our video for today. Which behind-the-scenes look surprised you the most? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.